You're listening to Season 2 of the Womenpreneur Asia podcast, and I'm your host, Krista Goon. Through Womenpreneur Asia, I hope to bring you stories of inspiring yet down-to-earth women in business across Malaysia and Asia. This episode is sponsored by Redbox Studio. In this episode, I'm excited to present to you Malaysian entrepreneur Cha-Ly Koh, who is the CEO and founder of Urbanmetry in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Cha-Ly extracts usable insights from urban development and city data to add value to urban planning stakeholders. In short, Cha-Ly went into the business of urban planning with a mathematical mindset so that she could make better, more livable cities. She calls herself the captain of a ship, leading her teams in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where she's based, as well as her team in Hanoi, Vietnam. Cha-Ly said she started with a naive idea in 2015 when she wanted to give away information for free. In the first few years of her business, she tried to throw money at the market and educate the market which wasn't ready for her products. And she quickly learned her lesson, and since then has become more agile in learning and adapting to what the market truly needed. I hope you have fun listening to this interview hours. Welcome to the Womenpreneur Asia podcast, Cha-Ly.
Nice being invited, and thanks for having me. Today.
Okay, so Cha-Ly, let's go into the thing that you told me before we got started, is that the thing you're most proud of is that you didn't go under in 2020. So let's start with this. Was this said with both relief and a fist pump?
I think more relief, personally. Generally, because we there's a couple of things as an entrepreneur I believe in, right? So the way that I started my company, or the main principle that I adhere to, is in good company, right? So people who join, so this phrase "in good company" is always something that is ingrained in my mind when I run the company. So I see it as I'm having this ship. I've invited some people on board my ship. And we're going towards a certain mission or certain things that we are sharing sentiments on. But the COVID was kind of like a huge tsunami that came our way, right? And I have all these people on board, right? And yes, my team is very independent, and they definitely pull their weight in the ship. But really, I'm captain, right? So I kind of determine in a lot of times where to steer the ship against the tsunami and how do we react with it. So, we didn't go under. When I say when we go under, it's literally the boat didn't flip and everybody's safe and on the ship. So that's something that I am quite proud of. Like, amidst the fact that we also, we had record sales last year or so. So it was very, it was a big moment for me, because I felt like, we sailed through a tsunami. There could be more tsunamis in 2021. We don't know. But for the moment, we got through that one big one that was threatening everybody in the market. Yeah.
So that's very interesting to hear that you actually had record sales despite the tough situation that 2020 was. So maybe that's a good way for us to get into your business. So tell us a little bit about your business and what got you into this business in the first place.
Right. So I am actually trained as an urban planner. But I had my degree in physics as well. So I'm a very math, STEM background, you might say. So I went into the urban planning business, or the urban planning field, with a more technical, more mathematical point of view, right? So when I did my master's in MIT, that's kind of like my direction, like more technical, more computational, right? And then when I left and then I came back to Malaysia, the goal was always, to make better cities. So how do you, city planning in Malaysia is, it's very developing country. I don't know how else to put it, but it's very developing country. There's a lot of aspirations. There's a lot of speed. Everything happens very quickly, which, is in line with most growing economies, right? So even the 1970s of Japan, or even in the industrial era of London, there's a lot of there's speed, there's a sense of momentum. But we also in this century has quite a lot of opportunity to look towards the mistakes and all the issues that comes along with very, very quick paced development in the West. And I always felt like, if history has already been there and we have the resources to learn from it, so we should, absorb that and not repeat those mistakes here in our country and I am in a way feels very strongly about it. So I came back to Malaysia and thinking that the knowledge that I have or like the experience I have could somehow add a little bit to how everything works here, right? So I did do some work both in the government and private sector, and in that mindset, right? The issue that I found was that a lot of times construction, housing, real estate development is seen as this very sort of age-old bricks and mortar business, right? And a lot of it is, centered around experience, which is fine, right? In a lot of things, experience do put in a lot of weight, and I truly acknowledge that. But I think there are a lot of new ways that prevents us, a lot of safeguards that are already there for you to prevent making the same mistake and learning it the very expensive way. So that was missing, right? So that whole idea of data-driven decision making or data-driven assessment of the market was missing. The way I see it is that it's kind of like a doctor. A doctor is very, very experienced, right? But there are MRIs being invented. There are CAT scans being invented. There's like all these machines that are done. And you cannot say, oh, just because the doctor is so experienced, I don't need all this, fancy, equipment, right? The equipments are there to assist the experienced doctor to make better decisions, right? And I found that in this part of the world, nobody is really building these machines because, the market is smaller than America, US, UK. So, the monetary benefits are, less. And the acceptance is less as well. So it's very, very difficult to convince the doctors here to actually, when I say doctors, it's metaphorically, I'm talking about the construction industry, to use these new tools because it's very sort of foreign, right, to them. So it started off with a frustration that I was going to these meetings and I was going to these decision-making platforms, and people were flying blind, right? It's sort of like, I went to Amsterdam, I went to New York, and I saw these, on my 14 days, lawatan sambil belajar, and then I come back and say, I want to do this. And it's very sort of like, are you serious? Like, what? How can I convince you that this is a bad idea, And you're trying to find data, to like, tell them this is, we are not New York and we are not, Korea or whatever it is, right? And it's difficult. It was almost impossible to find this information. So out of frustration, I started the company, right? I started a company with a very naive connotation, actually. So I started not thinking that, with better information, I can mobilize and liberalize the market, democratize it, or whatever you call it. And the buyers, or like the people who are consuming real estate, would move the market. That's kind of my initial sort of like very naive way of approaching the problem. Long and short of it is like that's how we started off with proprietary.com. And we thought like, we could give out information for free, Then of course, other things come in, like, your competitors. There are people with a lot more marketing money, right? Who's in the market and it could push things very, very quickly, very, with a lot more momentum than we can, right? And then there are also people who are like very difficult to educate. So we found that we were able to move certain segments, but a majority of Malaysians are not pre-educated to consume this information. So I built this, it comes out to a point where I am in this very narrow path, and I was trying to stay true to what I'm trying to do, which is the method of democratizing, and it wasn't really working, right? And the worst part was we went on a rabbit hole. We were like, no, by sheer grit, we can do this, So we went down, we spent a lot of money. We tried to throw whatever money we had at it. Didn't work. We miscalculated quite a lot. Not in terms of like our delivery, not even the product, but it's, the pre-education cost of the customer was very, very high. And we weren't ready for that. So it comes down to a point where I had to decide and go back to what's my true mission, right? So my true mission was to make sure that Malaysia builds better cities, right? Malaysia builds better environments for us to live in, more sustainable, and we are not at risk financially in our financial systems and our cost of living and everything to be more sustainable. That's kind of like true urban planning mission, right? So how do I reach that? And then I realized that actually the biggest movers in the markets are banks, governments, and property developers. Really. These are the main guys who they make one decision and it changes a big radius around where we live and how we live and things like that. So I decided that to focus my energy on that, like to focus my energy on empowering this group of people to make better decisions, so then they don't make decisions that are putting the rest of us at risk. So that became our focus eventually, and that realization also pushes towards the profitable path very, very quickly. So sometimes, being very like, an entrepreneur, you get so sucked into this idea. Oh, I have to win in this little battle, right? But actually, you lose the war if you spend all your resources there. So you kind of have to sort of step back, cut your arm, cut your business segments, and say, no, I'm not going to do this, and I have to, go back to what's going to bring me to the next level. Yeah, that's hard.
So I want to ask you this question. How do you come to the realization of like, now you realize that these are the more, how should I say, the customer segments that we really want to go after you have gone through this number of different types of customers, I would say, right? So was it like sometimes the market telling you or even your own team telling you? How did that realization come about?
So on my end, I think I'm a single founder for most part of it. So and it's difficult because in a lot of times you will have a lot of advisors. So a lot of people will tell you, you shouldn't do this, give up, right? Or you should, you should go down in the direction you get profitable, right? But they're not doing it. So it's very difficult. And a lot of times this advice is like contradictory. They can go north, south, east, west, right? So listening to the market is not a good idea either, because a lot of times what I am interested in specifically is creating something new. So I am not interested in making something that ABC has already done, and that's not interesting to me. So that's hard also because I'm trying to do something new. So if you say as a precedent this has happened before, then that doesn't help, right? The realization actually comes very honestly is because we ran out of money. So I was at this point where I am at, the money has I've spent it all on this B2C business. Didn't work. I only have my last 10, 15% left in funds. Do I keep pouring it into a business that obviously doesn't work? Or do I pivot and restructure my cost and invest in something that I have better surety of and I have a better grasp on? But maybe I don't really know exactly how it works yet, but I sort of have to experiment with a new product, right? So I would say I made that call and I say, okay, let's just, put all our resources into this other thing and then just see where that goes, because this original plan obviously is not working, right? So the ability to cut loss, it's painful but necessary. I think every entrepreneur needs to put their ego aside and just, cut loss both in ego and also in actual monetary terms. That you have to recognize yourself that what you are doing is not working.
Okay. So now I'm going to rewind a little bit and get back into how was Cha-Ly as a girl in your childhood? Where do you grow up? How do you grow up? And did that have any influence on you running the business now, or you being an urban planner?
Okay, I guess I have to be quite honest about this. I grew up in a middle class family here in KL. We pretty much defines middle class, I think. And growing up, I was competitive. I went to school, typical. I have a tiger mom, and I was sort of a natural leader. I would say. I think my friends recognize it as well in school clubs, in like classes and things. I was also very stubborn and also extremely curious about new experiences. So that's sort of kind of built-in character. When I graduated from school in SPM, so I went to a Kebangsaan school, Taman Petaling, very proud of it. Got out of Taman Petaling and then, applied for scholarships everywhere, and then I got one in India. So, for a typical Chinese Malaysian family, they're going to be like, your parents are going to be like, no way, you're going to India, right? So, but I'm naturally very stubborn. So I went. That's a short and so there's kind of like a character thing. I like to do things that are deemed quite different or like a more sort of like the path not well taken. So that's usually kind of my general tendency to do that. And I think it's both good and bad, because sometimes the road less traveled is often filled with like thorns and, things that are undiscovered, and you might not come out of it alive, So, but I do have a tendency to take that path. So it's proven good and bad and perilous throughout my life. But I think it's sort of like an ingrained thing. So very.
Are you the eldest?
I am the eldest. I'm one of two persons.
Okay.
Daughters, so sisters. I have a younger sister. Yeah.
Okay. So that probably explains why you are more of like I would say a risk taker. Would that explain it?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Usually the elders are like that. They kind of like try to do a little bit. I guess because you're firstborn, right? Firstborn usually have. Yeah.
Oh, actually, I attribute my risk taking to my dad, actually. So my dad is very adventurous, so he, like you said, childhood is a very big part of your psyche, right? So my dad used to take us to go diving, camping when we were very young, to deserted islands when there's nobody there. We go on boat rides, stuff like that. So my dad was generally very adventurous. He would, do very funky stuff that much of my other friends don't do. So that sense of pride when, you tell your friends like, oh, I did this, like blah, 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 like, last weekend or the last month was sort of like that kind of feeling that was built when I was very young. So I think that risk taking or doing something different from what other people are doing is, it came from my dad mostly, I think. And he gave me a lot of opportunity to express myself.
Was your dad an entrepreneur?
He was a business person. I don't think the word entrepreneur was popular. Yeah. They were all called business people, right? Yeah.
Okay. So do you think that rubbed off on you, being a business person? Seeing the risk taking, of course, the other parts of it were like him taking you girls out for all the outdoorsy stuff and adventure stuff.
I think mostly the lifestyle risk taking. So we weren't so in tune. I was kind of naive about this. So I don't think that was introduced to us much, but a lot of it is sort of like how you view life and what you do, how do you spend your time. I think that's really rubbed off me, at least very, very much so.
Okay. So now I want to switch up to talk about a book that you published called The Secret Greater Atlas of Kuala Lumpur, a collaboration with Think City. So how did that book come about and what was the message? Sounds very interesting, the Secret Greater Atlas of Kuala Lumpur.
Secret Atlas was sort of a gift actually to us from Think City. I feel it was an opportunity that they offered us that really launched us in a way when we were trying to move towards the B2B business, right? So we have this huge database that we already built over the years since when we formed in 2014, 20. And Think City is focused a lot on urban planning and cities and building diversity. So the mission generally, we're in sync, right? So literally, they are very good friends of ours because we view building sustainable cities the same way. We want it to be better and we want the environment to be better for everyone, right? Just the approach or the methods is different. And I think it's important to have different methods as well. So they are strong partners. So during that time, I was telling Hamdan, who, leads Think City, what we do. And then he said, Cha-Ly, what you do sounds so technical, all this mumbo jumbo data. Who's going to understand you? Nobody's going to, they won't get you because it's too many numbers and, all this fancy data and everything. Right? So he challenged us to communicate this to the public in a more simplistic manner and not in a way that only a professor and MIT could understand, but more like, a coffee table book and like, oh, this is what data can do. Because really, if you look at the people who are making decisions, they have very, very short attention span actually. So if you don't get the idea across very quickly on what value add does data have to how they're making decisions, you kind of lost them. You lost that opportunity to make an impact, right? So yes, the working level will be the one diving in and looking at the data, but then the decision maker is the one who's seeing value. Oh, I can imagine this having value in my business, right? But so if you don't do that, it's very difficult to push your agenda, to push change, right? So he challenged us. He says, you know what, let's work on a book together, and let's, showcase some of the data you have and the value that you can do. So, Matt Benson and Hamdan and Jia Ping, everybody else was very, very supportive, and they basically said, let's do this, right? Let's do this, like an art project. Basically something that, the general lay person can pick your book, flip through it, and say, I know what big data is, right? And honestly, I feel like with their support and all their inputs and guidance, we actually succeeded to do that. We had an exhibition. People actually, we even get book requests, book purchases from foreign universities. So, so that was a very successful piece for us. It continues to be very successful for us. Okay. But of course, it's not a revenue generating thing, so it's like more of a.
So how do you get your advocates within organizations like that? That's very interesting, right? That someone comes along and pitches you and say, hey, let's do this together. How do you get those advocates? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs need that too.
I think so. That's a very interesting question. I think most of the time you go out and you meet people, and you tend to sync with people who are like-minded or have a similar sort of mission or similar values to you. So an organization is not a dead thing, right? A company is not a dead thing. It has its own character, right? So it has its own character, its own personality. It just so happens to have more people in it that shapes it, right? So a company is a living organism, and it has personality, it has character. So it goes and interact with other companies, and then find friends. Right? Oh, you sound like me. You have the same sort of values and things like that. And then you create a community like with that, right? So I think first, entrepreneurs should not go into these relationships or like this commercial thing with a commercial end in mind only, right? So you tend to need to find friends and supporters and advocates by being what you do best. You need to first ask, how are you adding value to the system? How are you adding value to the industry? How are you adding value, right, to the community? Then you want to go and say, hey, I'm trying to add value to the community this way. How are you trying to do it? Maybe we can collaborate to get to the same sort of goal, right? But a lot of people, they go into it maybe in the beginning, they think, I can collaborate and then get a commercial sort of deal. If that's the intention, it's very difficult because you're not building long-term relationships, right? It's very transactional. Yeah.
So, that is an interesting answer too. So let me just ask you this: what would you be doing if you didn't hit Urbanmetry?
Very difficult question. I don't know. I think in general, I think I mentioned I am I need a reason to get up in bed every morning. So generally, the reason ranges a couple of ways, but usually I like to find a problem to solve. Currently, I am trying to solve this specific problem in Malaysia with how we are building our cities and how we are conceptualizing real estate and assets and things like that, with the vehicle that I have, which is Urbanmetry. So Urbanmetry is my vehicle in order for me to make an impact, to do something with society, right? If I'm not doing Urbanmetry, it probably is going to be another problem that I'm trying to solve, another thing that is like annoying me, and then I will create another vehicle or gather in another bunch of people who are similar-minded or have similar sort of annoyance and irks, and then trying to gather them to go and solve this other problem. So generally, that's kind of how I like to spend my time, I guess. And so I do that. Seeking new experiences, that's kind of what I do, yeah.
What is the hardest thing as a woman CEO? Because you're leading a team, right? A team of people.
Yeah.
What's hard about it?
There are many challenges, I think, as a woman CEO. One is on top of trying to convince, people to join your ship, that there is stability, there is reliance. So like a lot of people, they don't see. It is difficult to convince them because of years and years of nurturing that this ship has stability, this ship can give you security. Like you can attain your dreams on this vehicle that I've built. So that's hard. but not as hard as I thought it was. So naturally, I have a very, very good team. Honestly, I'm extremely proud of my team. So if you start going on about my team, then it's very difficult because I'll never stop, right? So, team is great. Convincing them to join, less challenging than I thought it was, but not easy either in the beginning. The other issue is, I think for me, primarily is because I'm in a very male-dominated industry. So construction, real estate, finance, somehow, is male-dominated, right? Often I find myself in a room with 40 men. I'm the only good at it, right?
So how does that feel? How does that feel?
I actually, honestly, it depends on the group. It depends on the group. It depends on the situation. It depends on the agenda. So am I the one pitching or am I being pitched at? It depends, right? But it's not a bed of roses lah. I think I'll be lying if I say that, right? But it's not impossible. So I think if you have in your mind that it's like, oh, it's so hard, they need to make it easier. I can tell you that's not going to happen lah. So business is business, right? But is it very, very, is it challenging? It is challenging. Is it impossible? It is not impossible. So I think that's the only thing I have to say. If you want it bad enough, you will strip yourself of your ego and go and try it, right? And then you just have to go and nurse yourself later with your damaged, self-esteem or whatever later. But you try. So that's all I have to say. And I think a lot of women, they're so fearful of this, right? They're so fearful, like they go in and like, it's too hard, I can't do this, But, the first sign of, it's harder to fail than to give up. So, yeah, that's kind of like my thing. So
that's a very interesting way of putting it. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
But are you one of the very rare women in this industry, the big data industry, in Malaysia at least?
Honestly, I don't track. So
okay.
I feel uncomfortable saying that I am rare or whatever. I think it is not rare. I meet a lot of women, right? I meet a lot of women in the architecture industry, especially. Very, very strong women-led, actually. Amazing people. A lot of them are my mentors. Finance world, tons of dragon ladies, power ladies, whatever you want to call them. People who have great glass ceilings and hear the glass shatters, right? So I've met a lot of very, very impressive people, women, in my circle of work, right? So I wouldn't say I mean, like, if you go and like say, oh, like very narrow, like big data in property industry, you can say you're special in like everything lah, because you can narrow down the category by so much, right? And all this, honestly, I don't think it matters, right? It's what really matters is are you doing what you love? And what you are sacrificing, either it is money, time, or your self-esteem or your ego or whatever it is, is it worth it, right? If it's not worth it, whether you're rare or not, it doesn't matter. So I think all those things are very superficial. I think what is really important is that the thing you spend your time on, was it worth it? To you personally, was it worth it? Or to your team? If it's not worth it, nothing can be said whether it's rare or not. If you be like a diamond industry, if you don't like it, what's the point, right?
Yeah. So I now want to backtrack a little bit. And how do you market your business in the early days when you first started?
Okay, so when I first started, I think I mentioned previously, we spent a lot of money very naively, very stupidly, and we market ourselves, right? Facebook, we learned the Facebook algorithm, blah, blah, blah. Went on this, spent a lot of money doing things that I should not be doing, so don't do that. Later on, a lot of our marketing comes from the quality of our work. So a lot of it was word of mouth. So till today, we don't spend any on marketing anymore. A lot of it is we commit a lot, we invest a lot in making sure the work that we do is of the top quality that nobody can beat. So with that, your best marketing is your client. When your client tell another potential client, they cannot help it actually. They even tell their competitors that they work with us because they're so proud of it, right? And that's your best marketing.
Wow. That actually was quite surprising, because I know that, of course, because this is, like I say, it's pretty niche business, even though you say that, you can narrow it down to certain things, but I would still think that it is a very, very niche business. So I love your answer. I love the fact that you say that even your clients are your best marketing and that you don't really spend much or none at all these days on marketing.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you define spending on marketing, So like before COVID, I would invest in going on conferences. Maybe it's like overseas, I pay for my own hotel room or my own, and that's marketing dollars. You go there and then you do the speech and you come back, Do they pay me? No. Do I pay them? No. But it's like, that kind of investment. Or sometimes free work.
Well, was that good return on investment for your time?
You get hits and misses, right? Sometimes you arrive somewhere and then you realize that it wasn't the audience that you expected, or sometimes it was like, ridiculously amazing audience. It's all a risk, lah. You try to gauge, but in the beginning of our journey, whoever gives us an opportunity, you just take. You just do pure grit, pure grit. Do until you got
pure grit marketing.
Yeah. So I mean, when you're small like us, then you just do whatever.
How big is your team right now? How are you? How many of you in KL, or is there any other location that you're in?
We're 21 full time, and 2 in Vietnam. Yeah.
So Vietnam is an emerging market for you?
No, actually, we have one of our senior. We call it our elder in the company, is Vietnamese. So our data scientist, he's Vietnamese. So he sits in Hanoi, amazing person. So a lot of relationships, over the years we built. It is an emerging market. I won't lie. We are eyeing that market. We are trying to grow there. But it's early days, lah. Early days. We're still feeding it out. But Vietnam is very, very interesting. So we're trying, and since, one of our elders are there, so we are trying to just sort of feel it out.
Tap into the market.
Yeah. A lot of Malaysian developers are actually going to invest in Vietnam as well. So that helps a lot with our client engagement too.
I see. Okay. So now I want to get a little up close and personal with you. If you could if you could turn back the clock and knowing what you know now, what would you tell a younger version of you about life? Not necessarily about business, but about life.
I think, this is a hard question, but I think, is this young woman like 14 or like 20 or like 30?
When she's just out of university.
I think when you're out of university, the first thing you need to be very aware of is that there is no limit to what you can learn. And your ego is worth very little. So it's not that you can, have no self-esteem and no self-worth. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that everything is a learning opportunity. So don't be afraid to like roll up your sleeves and just do first. Think later, right? Just do, as long as it's not illegal and like, whatever, like that is against your ethics or whatever it is, right? Don't think that when you're that young, right? There's no short selling yourself. There's no sort of like, oh, I'm worth more than la la la, and I'm not gonna do this and I'm not gonna do that. Everything is a learning opportunity. And I think when you are like at this middle career path, you would wish that you have more ranging experience. Like so, ranging experience from things that are very, very difficult to do, even like being a barista, right? Down to like selling things, door-to-door salesperson. That has an experience that would add to your comprehensive view of an organization. So if you want to be a CEO one day or somebody very, very high in corporate, the ones that are actually shortchanged are the ones who have never rolled up their sleeves and never before. Because they cannot understand what operations is like. What does a frontliner feel? Right? So they cannot empathize. And when you cannot empathize because you're sort of shielded in this sort of like ivory tower, I would say that you make less optimal decisions because you cannot empathize and you cannot understand the risk at that level, especially if the organizations are getting very, very big. So I would advise when you are very, very young, take the opportunity, the fact that you don't have as much challenge in actually, can you imagine like a CEO of McDonald's going down and flip burgers? It's not the best use of his time, right? So then, justification, like, he shouldn't be doing that. But if he has done it when he was younger, the ability to empathize is already there. And the cost of doing that when you're younger is much, much lower. So why not do it when you're younger, gain all that sort of, digging on the ground kind of experience. And when you are up, you can empathize with people who are working for you already, instead of trying to do it then.
So interestingly, just now you asked me what was the age of the young woman, right? So I said college, just graduated. What if it's even younger, like teenager, a young teenage girl? Like, just say she said, "Oh, when I grow up, I want to be a CEO of my own company. I want to do this thing for myself." What
I would help you with my son, man. When you're like 15, you shouldn't be thinking about your career. You should just be like out diving, volunteering, dancing, doing whatever hell that your parents are willing to pay for, man. Seriously. Why are you thinking about your career? I wouldn't.
These days, young women in those age groups, they're already thinking of growing up so fast, right? Like they want to do so many things.
Oh yeah, I hope that never happens to my kids. Like, I have 2 daughters, and
how old are they?
They're 9 and 7. So for me, it's I wish that they won't grow up so fast, and the nice thing about being comfortable is that you can afford that they are not having to grow up so fast, right? So when maybe your family is challenged, then you probably have to work very quickly, come out and work very quickly. But for me, I wish my kids would play until they cannot, right? Like, they reach 18, wean them off their parents, and they're all on their own, right? But before then, come on, like, for me, you are only a teenager once, and just enjoy it to the full max. And then there's a different time to do different things. I think, that's my thing. Yeah.
So what are your hopes and dreams for your own girls?
I hope that they are fearless. Like, the fear of failing doesn't infect them. Like, I think it's a disease. Like, this whole idea that I'm scared of losing, I'm scared of failing, I'm scared of being shamed or losing face, or all this nonsense that sometimes Asian people have. I wish they don't have any of that. I wish they are able to, even if they are scared, and everybody gets scared, right? Everybody gets some sort of fear, right? That they have that courage, to say, I recognize that I'm scared of this, and this is scary, it's difficult, but I'm going to try it anyway. So I wish for them courage, courage to just do stuff, right? And have the safety net to try again, to get up and try again. I think that's fundamentally what I hope for them.
Okay. So now that you talk about courage, which gives me also the next question. What are you no longer afraid of, and why?
I'm not afraid of ghosts.
Okay.
Have you seen any? I was joking the other day, not the other day, but a long time ago, maybe 2-3 years back, when I was like, earlier in my entrepreneurship, I was like, I'm no longer afraid of ghosts, because there's nothing more scary than payroll.
Okay, that's a good quote.
Because on the 24th, you better get your payroll in line, So, I think the difficulty, I think, for me now is that I'm not so afraid of sort of saying, being said no. So I think a lot of times when you put yourself out there, especially when it's so personal, like your own business, you are very sort of like, you take it very personally, right? So when people tell you, you're trying to tell this person, oh, I have this product, I have this amazing thing, blah, blah, blah. And that person is like, no, right? And because of that fear, you like, maybe I shouldn't sell to this person, or maybe I shouldn't go and approach this person. And I think that's less and less for me. I wouldn't say it's not at all, but like, I have sort of like told my ego to take a back seat and say, like, you can just go into the closet a little bit, sit there, and then, so I'm not so afraid of that. I'm not so afraid of like being told no, right? but yeah, payroll is scary still, I think. And I think a lot of it is because in the beginning of the conversation, I said, I see my team as to be in good company, and they have a lot of trust in me to maintain this good company, right? And so, so I think that's something that I'm still trying to like manage, but maybe the fear also is a good thing because it keeps me constantly innovating, constantly pushing the ship forward to safer waters, So yeah.
Do you have any unusual or quirky habits?
Quirky habits, I'm sure I do. I'm sure my team will say that I have a lot. I like to buy kueh. I don't know. I like to buy kueh. Yeah.
Okay.
Nyonya kueh, and then I order too much food, right? So every time I take my team out for lunch or dinner, nobody allows me to order. They're like, Cha-Ly cannot order because she will order like
a lot.
And then everybody end up either have to tapao home or like they have to eat too much. So nobody they were like, Cha-Ly can order.
That is so cute.
Like a weird thing. Yeah, I like art. I like a lot of art. So I have a bad habit of buying them.
Isn't it a good habit? Isn't it a good habit?
I'm also terrible at plants. I like to buy plants and they all die.
Okay. So, do you have any in the office right now?
Yeah. I have a garden behind me actually, and they tend to die, and then I keep buying plants and they keep dying. So there's a joke in the office that says that Cha-Ly goes to the nursery and then asks the plant, "Do you want to come back to the office and die?"
You are very cute for an urban planner and data scientist.
Yeah, so yeah, I like to buy plants
and food.
Plant food, and then they all either too much food or plants die. So it's kind of like that.
Okay. Then can I ask, what is one of the most worthwhile investments you've ever made?
Worthwhile investment.
You wouldn't consider art, right? I mean, you said you buy art.
I buy a lot of stuff that is totally nonsense.
Are you a shopaholic?
No, I hate shopping. So we actually have a designated shopper in the office. She buys everything for everybody, and I hate shopping like with a capital H. I buy a lot of whiskey. I buy a lot of art, plants for some reason. Worthwhile investment. I mean, I'm in the property business, so
So you buy properties.
I have some properties. I think the biggest investment, I invest in ourselves. So the business is where I invested the most in because I believe in it and I believe in the team and things like that. So that's my best. I think you, as an entrepreneur, you want to buy that entrepreneur experience. You have to think of it as you're investing in doing something that you want to do. So that's very worthwhile to me. It gives me a reason to get up in the morning. And I think there's nothing more worthwhile than that, right?
Yeah. Okay. And what about personal goals? Are you focused on any personal goals at the moment, or is the business the goal? Or running a business?
Yeah, well, so that we have a lot of products that we have on hand. We invest a lot in it. We are trying to see the light of day. There are a lot of challenges with getting it on board, mostly because it's a new product that I would say Malaysia or Southeast Asia has not seen. So it's hard, and it's a difficult thing. It's a challenge for us. The team is extremely proud of what we have done. I am very proud of what they have done and the blood, sweat, tears, sleepless nights that we have put in. So the fact that we actually got it ready and we actually have financial institutions that pay us money for it, it's freaking without the money, it's already like a big sort of like acknowledgement to us and the hard work that we put in, right? So I'm very, very proud of that. I'm focusing now because, the team has gotten the product like tip-top. It's like somebody made the EV car and there, and it's my job now to not make it crash. So I'm focused on that. I'm focused a lot on making sure that it sees the light of day and doesn't get destroyed along the way, or, that the clients get to see the full value of it. So I'm very much focused on it. Personally, I think it's challenging primarily because I'm still single management here. I'm a single founder for this company, and it is taxing. It's taxing mentally. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of as we grow, we are 20 over people, so there's quite a lot of people to sort of manage the mental health of the entire company. It's very taxing on the person managing the mental health of the entire company. So a lot of times I'm thinking, how do I regulate that? How do I compartmentalize my issues? How do I problem solve efficiently? So I try doing those things. It's hard, but it's a learning experience, and it's part of it's like growing pains, when you are 5% and you're 20% and you're 100%, the challenges are different. Trying to share that burden with somebody else is an option, but it's expensive. So it comes with the pros and cons. I'm continuously trying to grow into the role, but at the same time trying to define what role I should be playing in the organization. So yeah, getting all those puzzles in place and dancing to the rhythm is what I'm at doing. A lot of people, they make it sound so easy. They're like, oh, you have this organization structure. This is mine. I raise money. Da da da. But actually, a lot of it is chaos. A lot of it is like sort of finding a space for yourself in the middle of the storm and all this. You're trying to build a plane as it's flying, right? So you just one day you're the welder, the other day you're the pilot, the other day. So you're trying to sort of be everything. The fun part of it also lah. So focusing on enjoying that, I think, enjoying the experience, because you already invested in it, right?
So does that mean that in the next 3 to 5 years, you already know what you want to do for Urbanmetry, since you've got this new product out and all that?
Well, we all can have a plan, and we can all try for the plan. But I think the biggest thing about being an entrepreneur, that you just have to put it out there, and everybody who says they are not doing this are lying. Your ship is not that big yet, unless you are really, really big. Your ship is nimble, and that's really part of your advantage, that you're nimble. You can turn very quickly. It's big ship that is very hard to turn. So I see that as an advantage. Yes, I have a plan for the company. I have a plan for the team. I have a structure, all these things are there. If you don't have that, then you're just being irresponsible. But is everything externally and macroeconomically going to play to my cards? No, it has never, and it will never. And you cannot. The worst thing is that you got yourself a seat to play in this game. Too bad. You're sometimes dealt bad cards. You can have the best strategy in the world, but the dealer might give you really terrible cards. And you just have to have the heart and stomach to deal with it. That's it. Too bad.
I've really learned a lot from this conversation, and you know what? We're almost at the top of the hour. So before we end, I just wanted to ask you, what's that one key takeaway that you want our listeners to remember as a result of listening to our episode today?
Yeah, I think I'm sure entrepreneurship costs are different for everybody. But I think it is really an experience that it's very hard to replace. It's one of those things that, really money cannot buy. But it is very, it's not all beds and roses either. So if you take the experience, if you want to be an entrepreneur, there's like a lot of encouraging messages out there, people saying that, oh yeah, it's really, really great. But it's not really, not all the time. So part of it is almost like entering a marriage, right? There are ups and downs, and you just going into it with eyes wide open. You need to acknowledge upfront that there will be days where your stomach is churning and you don't know what to do, and you're like, just like stuck. But there are days where it's just, life changing, and you're just on top of the world, and you're like on top of this wheel, and you're just like, how did I get here? So it's very extreme. So if you don't have the stomach for this roller coaster, other experiences are out there, right? So don't feel like, oh, everybody's being an entrepreneur, I have to do this. It's really not for everybody, but it is quite rewarding, but also quite damaging as well. So it's a lifestyle choice almost, right? It's like something that you choose into, like try to think about it that way. But Would I exchange it for anything else? No. But that's really my character. And I don't think everybody should make same choices anyway. So, yeah.
Okay. Final question. Where can people find you? Or if they want to connect with you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, email us at hello@urbanmetry.com or info@urbanmetry.com. Our website is urbanmetry.com. Our contact information is there. Reach out, coffee, etc. Very open, yeah, if COVID allows.
Yes. If we're able to have group events or meetings or even one-to-one, that would be great, because these days it's getting harder and harder to do all this face-to-face meetups. So thank you once more, Cha-Ly. I really had a good time talking to you. I hope it wasn't that bad an hour. It was not so much of, how shall I say, not really so much about the questions, right? I hope you enjoyed the questions, and I hope that it gave you some food for thought.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll help some, people trying to think about, being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get very uncomfortable when conversations are about me, but then, instead of the business, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask before we end is that, would you have considered a co-founder in the early days of your business? If you know what you...
I mean, I am looking for a co-founder. I've been looking for years. It's not easy lah. It's not easy. I think I wish it was as easy as when I decided to get married. And I guess because I'm expecting it to be very easy, like that. That connection is immediate. The
instant chemistry.
But a lot of times I kind of feel now like I'm the single mother. You're a single mother and you have a lot of kids already, and then you want your kids to also accept your partner, which is a very difficult thing, I think, sometimes, because there's already a family, there's already a culture, there's already all these things. It's hard. But it's just a title. I consider a lot of my team members are co-founders now. Right? So but we all play different roles. So I think more importantly is to get more people on the ship. Then things get diluted, and if everybody has ownership, and it doesn't really matter if you have a co-founder or not. I'm sort of at that stage now where I'm just sort of I just have many children who are very good, and then
and be the best single mom that you can be.
Yeah, I think that's since you've done it for so long anyway. But honestly, I feel like the weight is being carried by most of my team members anyway now, because they are as committed or even more committed to the company than I am. So I don't really have. But in the beginning, yes. In the beginning, it was sort of a lot, right? Like this. But there will be moments like that as you go along, and I'm sure there will be more moments like that as we go bigger. So you can see your team as people who are sharing your weight, or the people who are weighing you down. And I choose to see my team as people who are lifting me up, lah. So instead of that's I think the fact that you can employ people helps, right? Because you get to choose who you get on the boat. You're like, oh yeah, And I'm actually a pretty bad, I fire quite quickly. So if I just sort of dating period 3 months, bye, and then because you don't want this sort of again, it's a cumulative thing. If you have people coming in lifting the weight, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter, right? But then if somebody's weighing you down, then what's the point of having 100 people?
Yeah. Okay. So on that note, we end this episode. And I think I've learned so much too, listening to you. So many interesting insights from someone who I believe is you know what you're doing and you know where you want to go. And I love your analogy of being the captain of your ship and having all your people on the ship going in one direction rather than going in 10 different directions and getting, blown by the wind left, right, and center. So thank you once more, Cha-Ly. I look forward to speaking to you again.
Okay? Yeah, you too.
Take care. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode. You can find all the links and show notes on our website, womenpreneurasia.com. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. If you're sharing this on your social media, please use the hashtag Womenpreneur Asia. In next week's episode, I'll be speaking to Shamala Hinrichsen, who is the founder of the social enterprise Hanai. Hanai seeks to empower women to take charge of their health. Shamala grew up in Malaysia and was trained as a medical scientist with experience in corporate, government, as well as research sectors. We'll be talking about how she built and launched a healthcare app targeting indigenous women, aiding them in maternal, mental health care, and preventing domestic violence. She and a team did all this in 4 months with extensive travels across Borneo, meeting with leaders of tribal communities, creating a needs assessment, and building a tool to serve the needs of women in rural areas. I hope you're just as excited as I am to learn from Shamala. I'll see you next week.